All things defense. DeAndre Ayton, Mikal Bridges, Devin Booker. What will they all be doing on the defensive end of the floor? Why does it matter? And can it help the Suns get to the promised land? Coming up, all of that right away here on Locked On Suns.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns. I'm your host, Brendon Kleen, credentialed media member covering the Suns the past 5 seasons, and your host here every single day. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen every single morning. Follow the show on Twitter at Locked On PHX Suns if you have not already. It is time for question number 11 in our Suns preview series here. 13 questions that will define the Phoenix Suns season. Joining me to help answer question number 11 is Mo Dakhil. You can hear him at The Athletic. You can read him at Bleacher Report. Mo, how are you doing? Are you ready for the NBA season?
I'm pumped, Brandon. I cannot wait for the NBA season. We're recording this on a Tuesday night, and it's a week away, man. We're so close.
We are so close. It feels crazy that I had this half-baked plan to do 13 questions as an ode to Steve Nash, and now here we are at number 11, winding our way down. Just one preseason game left for Suns fans, and then a big break, which is really weird. But the question we're answering today, in short, is how could the Suns defense change in 2022? And, we'll obviously get into, does it need to change? What would it look like if it did change? But what I want to start with you on, Mo, is what do you think was the problem with the Suns defense in the finals? Because I feel like it was really that end of the floor that did them in. You can bicker with that. I'm sure that there could have been things on offense that they did better. You don't ever lose a game on just one side of the floor, but that felt like where things started to fall apart and they just weren't able to stop Milwaukee. Why do you think that was? And what did you come away from that final series feeling about the Suns defense?
Yeah, some of that was, I think, fatigue a little too, right? Like when you look at Milwaukee, I mean, it's just they overwhelm you with size, and let's just be honest, the Suns are not a big team. It's DeAndre Ayton, and then your next center at that time after Dario Saric went down was Frank Kaminsky, and even then, even with Saric, still not big. It wasn't.
No.
I think really their defense just got worn down over time by the Bucks. Like, early on for me in that series was the Suns have to win this one early, in 5 games, in a sweep, just because I felt like they would wear down a bit and it catches up to you. And, it's a long run throughout everything. I think ultimately that's really kind of what did them in was just their lack of size overall. Because, they have a ton of great defenders, but I think fatigue got in the way. And then when you're having to play, Frank the Tank for a couple of minutes, your defense drops. And I think that's kind of becomes a big thing. Like, when you look at it this way, I just pulled up Frank Kaminsky's on-off numbers. When he was on the court, just 29 minutes, played 4 games, 29 minutes. Defensive rating for the Suns was 122.8. For the series, they were 114.9. Like, the thing is, in playoffs and in the finals, it's such a small sample size, but because the finals are itself a small sample size. So 29 minutes can kill you. And I think that's really stuff that started to really kind of hurt them because, other guys were fairly solid defensively for the most part. Your major guys is just when you had to go to the other guys, you ran into trouble.
Yeah, Suns fans are going to cook me alive if I keep talking about the finals. So I will zoom out a bit because, of course, that's not, we don't know if they'll face the Bucks. That's the least of their concerns in the short term. And we also saw some of those same issues hurt them during other parts of the playoffs, right? I mean, Anthony Davis in that game 3 was really devastating. And that's when everybody came away thinking the Lakers have this in the bag because of what AD was able to do. And again, we don't know if they'll face him necessarily, but did they solve those size issues, do you think, in the offseason? Do you feel better? Because, I mean, they get JaVale McGee, but other than that, the roster does look pretty similar. They actually lose Torrey Craig, who's one of the only guys that you really could say was a bigger wing, a bigger forward option for them. So it doesn't look like to me that that part has been solved. With that said, though, there's obviously other ways of accounting for that. So how do you feel about the defense kind of heading into this upcoming season overall? Do you think that it's just a matchup thing that they have to try to avoid, or are there some structural problems that are going to flare up no matter what?
Right, and I mean, we can start with just like the additions and bringing in JaVale McGee and adding another big man. Like that's solid. I think that was a pretty decent pickup. We know all the histories of how spacey JaVale McGee can get from time to time, but again, you're just counting on him to play, 15 minutes or whatnot. I think that's you're going to be okay in that sense. It's not like they wowed me with anything they did, but let's just be honest, Brandon. If they come back and do the same exact defense that they had all last season, I mean, it was 6th in defensive rating. Like they were right in the mix. They were a solid defensive team. They improved their defense once the playoffs began. I think they have the tools. Mikal Bridges is a hell of a defender. Chris Paul, though he's getting old, it's turning into a crafty defender, a little bit sneaky with some of his stuff. And knows how to get away with things. But Crowder's still solid. DeAndre Ayton made lots of improvements defensively, and really throughout the playoffs, I thought was a real good centerpiece for the I was about to say the Bucks, for the Suns. In that whole thing, I think guys will just continue to get better defensively, but and that might see a jump, but I don't know if there's much more they could do. But even if they can't do much, they were pretty freaking good.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's this weird thing, and I think that the NBA kind of overreacts to it sometimes, where one player or one type of player goes off in a postseason, and we kind of act like we need to account for that. Like last offseason, the big talk was the Lakers' size, right? With having AD at the 4 and then Dwight or JaVale. Well, it's like, I think at the end of the day, really the Lakers' best identity would be if they can play small. So that feels a little silly in hindsight. Similarly with this, it's like, yeah, I mean, we can all go out there and try to chase a Giannis stopper, but the reality is there aren't a lot of those. And I do think that just DeAndre Ayton growing as a player and getting those reps against AD, against Giannis, will probably make him a little bit better equipped for it, especially if he doesn't feel like he has to save his fouls quite as much with JaVale McGee there. So I think that there are obvious internal solutions and their structural identity is not flawed by any means. But let's dig into some of this a little bit more, because there are some statistical things that jump out when you look at the defense. And, obviously there are going to be some changes. Teams don't just stay the same year after year. We even saw that by the end of the finals. They looked a lot different than they did matchup wise and everything else at the beginning of the finals. So we'll get to that stuff in just one second. First, though, a quick word from SweatBlock. SweatBlock is the little secret to confidence right in your back pocket. Anyone who lives in Arizona knows that sweat and the odor that comes with it can be a nightmare. It can be just, it doesn't even mean you have an issue with anything. You just have to deal with it because of where you live. And it doesn't make it any better when you have a big appointment or you have a meeting or a presentation or a date or a hangout with friends and family that you are anxious for. It all piles up and it can really suck. That's why SweatBlock comes in handy. Again, that little secret to confidence right in your back pocket. Put it in any bag, any work bag, backpack, whatever it might be, or right in that back pocket, because it is not your typical deodorant. It's not a big clunky stick you got to carry around. It is a wipe. It's like a wet nap. You just crack it open, apply it underneath. They say apply it before you go to bed the night before. It gets to seep in there, stick in there. You wake up. They say let it go for 7 days. I get it if you're a little nervous living in Arizona or otherwise and not willing to push it 7 days. I usually, when I've tried it in the past, I'll go, 2, 3, and it really does stay that long, which is far more than, again, a deodorant, which you're going to have to reapply multiple times in a day if it's especially hot. So again, think of it not like a typical deodorant, but that little secret to confidence that can get you through the day, get you through a sticky situation, pun definitely intended. If you're someone you know could benefit from checking out SweatBlock, go to sweatblock.com, use the promo code LOCKEDON when you do. to get 20% off your purchase. Again, that's promo code locked on at checkout for 20% off at sweatblock.com, or check them out at Amazon and CVS. Okay, Mo, answering again this question here. Question 11, how could the Suns defense change in 2022? I'm going to go through the numbers here real quick. Some of the ones that jump out just looking back in hindsight. So the Suns allowed a ton of threes, and that's somewhat by design, right? They help at the nail. They have that early help where Mikal Bridges or Jay Crowder is going to get in the driver's face in the pick and roll to crowd things, to prevent the lane from, being open and maybe create some turnovers. So naturally, three-point shooters are going to be able to get looks off. They want to be, by design, not letting the great shooters get those off. They also allowed an incredibly high percentage at the rim. 65.5% of opponent shots went in at the rim. And a lot of the teams made a lot of the threes that they were able to take. Didn't burn the Suns too bad. Again, if you let the bad shooters take them and every so often they get hot, on the whole, you're probably going to be okay. And then last but not least, transition. They got pretty lucky during the regular season transition wise. They didn't allow teams to do too much damage, even though they allowed a lot of frequency in transition. But in the postseason, they didn't do enough to stop that. And I think a lot of these numbers are going to be colored by what Milwaukee was able to do. But even the Lakers at times were able to get out and run, and different teams were able to punish them that way. And they were one of the worst transition defensive teams in the postseason. So that's kind of the overarching view. But again, like you said, it worked. So what if you were in that coaching staff, in that video room for Phoenix? Would you be looking to try out differently heading into this new season?
Yeah, I think the first area I think I would start is gang rebounding, right? And I think that's a big part of it. Everything kind of stems from that part of the court. When you're able to get stops, you got to finish with the defensive rebound. And for the most part, that's not a great area. They were 18th. It wasn't like, I'm not saying because they're smaller, right? You're starting Crowder at the 4, you're automatically starting small. And in the Western Conference, it's a fairly bigger conference, with a lot of the teams. And I think, you're giving up a lot of stuff on the boards on those ends. And that's a big key there. Transition defense wise, it gets a little bit trickier because I think that's where your offense comes into play also. So you have to have more awareness in terms of floor balance. And when guys are, when Chris Paul's running his high pick and roll and he's running down and Ayton rolls to the rim and you have two shooters in the corner, it creates a situation where really you have 4 guys below the free throw line at this point. It makes it tough. And Chris is very good. If he doesn't make the right play out of it, or Devin Booker, if they don't make the right read out of it, Cameron Payne along those lines, and the other team gets a stop, it does open up that opportunity for them to get out in the break. So I think they have to work on the floor balance and how to kind of recognize when, like, hey, I don't need to be in the corner, and this maybe it's the strong side corner guy should probably start to kick up. There's got to be a different, more ideas and philosophy in that sense of getting back on defense, because that's sort of what holds you back in transition defense. Usually it starts with just poor it's a tongue twister to say, poor floor balance usually ends up being the big cause of that. And I think that's something that you have to kind of address right away. And that's something you address with your offense. And that's it seems funny, but like I always talk about it, a lot of the defense sometimes issues can be fixed with depending on how the offense reacts to certain things. And that's going to come down to guys making sure they're getting back in transition and giving better floor balance in that instance.
Yeah, that's all great stuff. The other thing I didn't say about the rim accuracy, opponent rim percentage, was that in the playoffs, it actually went down from the regular season and was the second best rim accuracy defensively in the entire NBA during the postseason. And I'm sure there's a lot of noise and a lot of that type of data just looking at it raw. But I do think you can probably draw a pretty strong correlation between Ayton just playing hard and playing incredibly well and being on the floor 40 plus minutes in a lot of those games. And the fact that the Suns were able to protect the rim. You mentioned Frank Kaminsky. He's by no means going to be stopping many people. So you get Ayton out there and things are going to look better. That said, we did see in that Anthony Davis matchup, in the Giannis matchup, even in the Jokic matchup, who's a guy who can stretch the floor and put the ball on the floor from, face-up situations. He's going to pull you away from the basket a little bit. That Ayton was out there pretty much full time when those matchups came about. So I wonder what you think the Suns can do to, being that small type of team. It's a way that a lot of teams play these days. The Heat just made the finals with a very small team and a even smaller center than DeAndre Ayton. But how do they continue to protect the rim and shore up the paint while also trusting Ayton to go out and patrol the perimeter against these wings and forwards who are going to try to score on them at the same time?
I mean, you just asked the question. If I had the answer to, I'd be making a lot of money along the sidelines.
Well,
It's going to come into some interesting things there. I think, the one of the bigger points is when Ayton comes over and rotates over to block a shot, you got to have that backside rotation, and they've been pretty good about that. But what happens is if you don't have that rotation over, the big man stops coming over because he doesn't trust that somebody else is gonna drop down and cover for him. So, those are going to be the kind of things that it's all team effort, right? It's the constant rotations for one another. So, for Ayton to be able to kind of keep that rim protection up that he had during the playoffs, he's got to continue everybody else has got to do their part in it. They got to pitch in to make sure that he has those moments so that he has somebody covering for him, because it comes down to helping the helper. And when that happens, everything starts to fall into place. And that's really where the defense begins to grind. And then, he is going to get put out there on the perimeter a lot, and we're going to see how that works. I thought he did a pretty good job throughout the playoffs. He made a leap from the regular season to the playoffs in his defense. I thought it improved drastically. And I think I was surprised by that. I wasn't expecting that. And now it's, can you sustain what you have? It's going to come down to not just Ayton doing it at this high level, but everybody around him doing their part. When the big man's got to come and step up on the perimeter, it's what's the guard doing? Is the guard coming over to fighting over the screen to relieve him? Is the guard doing a good job switching late so he's not in a bad position? It's all of those things, and it's why the it's why defense is such a team defense thing. Great defenders also have good defenders around them to help.
Yeah.
And I think that's the ultimate thing there. And I think this is where you're going to get good things from the Suns, because we talked about it. Ayton, I think, is going to get better defensively. I think Bridges is going to get better defensively. I think even guys like Cam Johnson are going to improve defensively. Jay Crowder, he's a little bit up there in age, but he's good at where he's at now, and CP's always going to be at the very least a solid defender. So I think you're in a good position. Even Devin Booker has improved defensively, and we're probably not giving him enough shine. Like, he's made some strides defensively. He's got to continue to make those strides and continue to help out. But there's a lot of promise in that when you look at their defense already.
I think so too. And, helping the helper and the backside rotations and things like that. I think you look at block percentage, but for Mikal Bridges has trended up significantly every year. I think that's an area where going into last season, I was really hoping he would be able to improve because, Kelly Oubre made some questionable decisions. He's by no means like an incredible team defender, but at the same time, he could get up there and block some shots and is a guy who has that athleticism. And I was hoping Mikal could add a little bit of that to his game. I think he did. Jay Crowder just having the physicality and ability to draw charges and things like that he does, slap the ball away, just get in the way. I think that's sort of his best utility. Yeah, and salsa dancing. Maybe combine the two, maybe get into some salsa under the basket. I wouldn't be surprised if he busted it out. And all that stuff's happened, right? So, I think that they are making progress, and it is still a young team, so I totally get you. Where I want to end here is to kind of get your thoughts on, we've talked a lot about Thaddeus Young here in the Valley. There's been a lot of reporting around him and his availability. I obviously think the Suns have an extra roster spot. They have some trade chips. They do have the means to get better in season. So I want to kind of hear what you think they might try to do, what they should do there. After a quick break, first, though, a word from Built Bar, the best tasting protein bar ever, my favorite protein bar. And Built Bar likes to say the healthiest candy bar ever because that's really closer to what it is. I have one last bar from my cookie dough chunk pack that I was so graciously given by the folks at Built Bar. The worst part of that, though, is that it always comes to an end. I finish the box and then I have to figure out what's next. What box am I going to order next? Whether it's coconut or raspberry, one of the classic favorites there, or my personal favorite double chocolate, or some of the seasonal ones like that cookie dough chunk or German chocolate or orange. They are constantly rotating out so you don't get bored. You get to try new stuff. It's seasonal. It's based on the flavors of the moment. So always, always, always giving you the best tasting stuff that they can over at Built Bar. But each and every one is going to be covered 100% chocolate. It's going to be packed with 17 to 18 grams of protein, and it's never going to be more than 180 calories. So you get something light. Maybe it's between meals, maybe it's before a workout, after a workout, whatever it might be. You never have to worry that you're putting something bad into your body. You just put that in there, chew it up, and you're good to go. It's going to get you the protein and that power that you need to get through your day. Go to built.com, use the promo code LOCKED15 at checkout to get 15% off your next order. Again, that's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. Closing out the show here with Mo Dakhil of Bleacher Report and The Athletic. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen every single morning. We are T-minus 6 days, less than 1 week till Suns basketball is back in our lives. I could not be more excited. Mo, of course, is as well, and is way more locked into the whole league than I am. So I'm sure you're a little nervous as well that there's going to be so much more work coming up for all of us, but we all love it, so it's fine anyway. I wanted to ask you, though, as I was saying coming into the break, Mo, Thaddeus Young, is that the type of player that makes sense to you? I mean, he does some offensive things that make him a good fit, in my opinion, here as well, as a playmaker, as a little bit of a floor spacer, maybe not the best you could get there, but can get that job done, has size, maybe can be a backup five for you a little bit. But defensively, I think you'd be looking for him to be an option on the Giannis types, on the Anthony Davis types. Is that a role you think he can fill? Is he somebody you would target if you were Phoenix?
I'll push back a little bit on the being able to defend some of those guys
Okay.
really well. I think he'll have a hard time with that. But Thaddeus Young is going to be a name associated with every contender. Every contender is going to have their eyes on him and hoping they can find a way to pry him away from San Antonio. Like, I think there's going to be a lot of that, with what you're looking for in that, because he does have a lot. He does bring the opportunity to play kind of the, small ball situation, playing a power forward, could play center at times for spells and things like that, depending on the lineup and so on. So I think there's going to be a lot of stuff. But that's the good news for the Suns, is they're in on those conversations, right? Like, they're at that level now where they can look at those guys. I mean, we're 2 or 3 years removed when they were giving up those guys. In theory, that was Tyson Chandler, right? Like, that was
Trevor Ariza. Yep.
Trevor Ariza. Like, they're in a different position. They're on the other end of it, waiting for, like, hey, we're players in the buyout market, right? Like, we got to pay attention to it. So it's so hard, though, especially this early in the season. I mean, we haven't even started kind of predicting like who is going to be the buyout candidates, who are going to be the guys that are going to be available, and can you get them and whatnot. But like, that's the right mindset. A guy like Thad Young is something, but he can help the Suns. Like, there's no question about it. He can also help the Lakers, can also help the Clippers, can also help Dallas, can also help Utah. Like, we can go through the whole list of teams. Like, everybody should be in on this and at least very much paying attention to it. And he's kind of like the first name, I think, that pops into everybody's head along those lines.
I thought San Antonio was going to get rid of him. I'm surprised that he lasted this long. I know they don't really make trades, and I know he's the type of guy, just as like an efficient, smart veteran basketball player, that's going to fit well with how they want to operate over there. But it surprised me that they wanted to hold on to him. And obviously, maybe they drive the price up by waiting, and you get some desperate teams. There's injuries, everything else, and maybe you do get a little bit more than you might have in September. But it just seems like a waste that he's going to spend some time there, and he's made it clear he wants to win and all that stuff. So everybody will be watching. Suns fans will surely be watching as well. It sounds like, though, like I was going to ask you concoct a player in a laboratory. What type of player would you want to add to make this Suns team even better? It sounds like not that they can't get better, but it seems like you would be fine rolling with what they have and just counting on some of that internal growth to get them over the hump. It doesn't sound like you think there's a huge missing piece here.
I don't. I think if there was one thing I was going to add, it would be more size. You know,
Yeah.
it's not. We just saw how it kind of hurt them come the finals. I mean, granted, they made it all the way to the
Yeah.
finals, but like you see the issues with that when they do come up against a big team. I'm sure this will annoy fans, but I still think if the Lakers were healthy, it's a different series. And that's again their size comes into play there. I think
Yeah.
when you're looking at some of these other teams that you're going to have to face, Denver with Jokic is still going to be an issue, right? And just you're still really thin up there. And I think that would be the only real thing because you got the wing defenders, and that's a huge piece that a lot of teams are missing, and I think that goes a long way. But just that's the one thing where I'd feel a lot more confident if they just added a little bit more size in that. And JaVale McGee's nice, but it's they need a little bit more to go with that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the guy who's been, I've been hosting this show for going on 4 years next month, and I probably was talking about Aaron Gordon for 3.5 of that until he got traded to Denver.
Right.
Because I mean, he's exactly the type of player that I think would solve that, where he can fit enough into that small ball identity without, making you too big and too and not versatile enough anymore, but also has a little bit more strength and size. I was yelling about Paul Millsap all offseason, and I know that's a big downgrade from Aaron Gordon, but he's at least a piece, a versatile piece there. Thad, I think, could at least start to answer some of those questions. I've even hollered about Rondae Hollis-Jefferson on this show, and I know he's not going to make an ounce of difference, but he's always available, and it's those guys, and they haven't really ever taken a swing on many of them. I guess you could say Chandler Hutchison is a very, very long shot type of player who sort of fits that mold. But I think you're right. I mean, they have this roster, and at the end of the day, too, one of the cons of a potential acquisition of a player like Thad or whoever it might be that I've talked about too is like you're starting to talk about taking playing time away from players who might just be flat out better, even if they're smaller, right? Like, is Paul Millsap better than JaVale McGee? Like, is he better than Cam Johnson? Like, yeah, you want to have the versatility. You want to be able to mix and match lineups when you do face matchups where you need to do that. But they have a top 8 or 9 here that is pretty good. I have a couple rapid fire ones for you before we get off here, Mo. I know Monty Williams is very big on, pun intended here, big on size. Is it crazy to think we might see some DeAndre Ayton and JaVale McGee lineups? Would that be just stupid in 2021, or could it work? What are we going to see that? What do you think?
I don't think we're going to see that. I think that's, unless it's just like, hey, we're playing around.
Hey, we saw Ayton and Kaminsky for way longer than I thought we would last year. We saw Baines and Kaminsky. Or Baines and Ayton. I know the difference is JaVale McGee can't shoot, right?
Exactly. And that's the ultimate thing. So now, unless Ayton's going to start flashing a very consistent three-point shot, I don't think you're going to see that. I think that's where you run into issues. So I think that's what you're looking for in that instance. So you're going to be hard pressed to find the that scenario unless it's like a 30-point blowout and Monty's just like, screw it, let's have some fun.
Sure. All right. The other one is somebody you mentioned at the end of the last segment, and you're right. We probably should have talked about him sooner. Last year, I think anyone who watched Devin Booker was going to look at it and say that he had made some strides. He wasn't as he didn't have as many just slip ups and lackadaisical efforts off ball on defense. Guys weren't beating him quite as often, although it did still happen. Strength wise, I think he's gotten a lot bigger and stronger since joining the league, and so he's able to match up a little bit better with some of his just on-ball assignments. He doesn't have to be hidden quite as often. And look, frankly, he's not going to be on a team with Chris Paul and Cameron Payne. He's not going to be hidden because he can't be if they're already being hidden. So the result of that was, late in the finals, I was advocating, and I think a lot of Suns fans were advocating for him to be the guy to check Chris Middleton more often and to try to see if that was something that they could survive doing to allow Bridges to be on Holiday and Ayton to be on Giannis and the trickle-down effect there. So Does that make sense to you, understanding how much we have to expect Devin Booker to do from a usage perspective offensively for him to be guarding guys like that consistently? And do you think he's grown enough where that's actually a possibility? Because the numbers would still tell you he's a huge minus.
Yeah, I think it's one. I think players should accept that challenge. Like the greats can do both, cover on both ends. Let's just start there, right? Like the everything about being legendary and all of that. You got to be able to play on both ends of
Wow,
the court,
shots at the
right?
tattoo.
You
Mo
know,
just shade.
whatever. But it's just you got to be able to play on both ends, right? And that's what I'm saying. Like, when you look at the greats, and we're talking, you know, Jordan at his best, Kobe. When we're talking about LeBron, when LeBron doesn't have the best defense, but like when he's locked in, he's a hell of a defender. When you're looking at the Kawhis and guys like that, like that's what you kind of need. And I want to see Devin Booker take on that challenge more often. It is a concern that you are going to be worried a little bit about tiring him out too much. But that's where you got to come in and go like, okay, then we're going to sub you out for a few minutes. We're going to change our rotations so that you can get a breather here and there. Maybe we're going to use our timeouts a little bit differently to buy you another minute or two to catch your breath. But those are the things I want to see from Devin Booker. But I think that's a fair assessment. I thought he did a pretty good job on Chris Middleton when he was on him at times, and he's got the size. He's strong dude. Like there's no question he can do it. In terms of like, it's not like, when you look at Steph Curry, you're like, yeah, he's skinny, he's too small, he's not going to be able to do it. Devin Booker can, and I think that stuff we can see more of, and I think that's the next step in his progression. Offensively, I'd like to see him maybe become a little bit better of a playmaker, but really where I want to see the most growth is in his defensive game.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you get to a certain point where it's like, this is a guy who during the regular season is going to be playing, 34, 36 minutes. During the playoffs, going to be playing 40 plus for you. He's one of the more physically, the profiles on your team physically that you would hope could be a pretty solid wing defender. And a guy like that, you just needed to be able to take advantage of what he is on defense. He's a brilliant player. He's athletic. He's strong. He fits the mold of somebody who should be able to play defense for you at a really high level. I get some guys, do and don't have that. I'm not just trying to say snap your fingers like I could go out there and do it. But of course, that's what the expectation is. And I think as he gets further into his career, as he learns to balance himself on offense and pick his spots, choose his spots, control his sort of effort and fatigue and all of that stuff, you would expect that that's a part of his game that he could grow into, even if it would be a really big growth pattern for him to get all the way to that. And I get that. He was really not great at all coming out of Kentucky, but I think that there has to be a commitment from him there. And I think that we've already seen it, and I think you'd hope it would grow. And overall, all of this stuff, I think it might sound simple, but having a legitimate training camp should do wonders, because this is a team that somehow developed chemistry over the course of the season by having veterans and having, the young guys having spent some time together previously, and they figured it out on the fly. But look, now they'll have some real time together. So I hope that affects things in a positive way, and that they do just some of the help and some of the commitment and the role and the rotations that we've talked about. A lot of that stuff just gets better from repping it and being together and being a team for a longer time. So I think that's a good summation of the defense, man. I appreciate you coming on. I saw you participated in little Kyrie Irving roundtable, getting in on the news of the day. Anything else? Anything else folks can check out from you, be expecting from you as we get toward tip off?
I have something coming out towards the end of the week, hopefully, on Bleacher Report along the lines of looking at these foul changes, the way the game's going to be officiated a little bit differently. There may be a son who will be featured a little bit in here, but I'm not going to spoil who. But taking a look at that stuff, and then you can always check out my work on Nerder She Wrote on the Athletic Podcast Network. That comes out every Friday with me, Seth Partnow, and Dave Dufour. And who knows what we end up talking about. So that's pretty much what I have coming towards the end of this week.
All right. Yeah, great show over there. I listen all the time, and Mo's one of the best at breaking stuff down on Twitter as well. So if you don't already, follow him at Mo Dakhil _NBA. We will be back tomorrow with a Actually, I'm going to put it up late tonight, as I always do. Recap of the final preseason game. We'll get one more of these 13 questions out of the way, and then closing the week out with Jake Fisher, also a Bleacher Report. So he will be giving us the latest on all of the Suns trade reporting and trade rumors from throughout the offseason. So check us out then, guys. Until then, enjoy your Wednesday and enjoy the game.